Hello. 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 Um. Yo, what up? Hi. Hello. It's late. It's late, but we're gonna do some reading today. Cause that's the challenge. We'll go from. What are we gonna go from? I know chapters 9 through 12 in Psalms 80. It's written here, my handy dandy screen. So I got you. And again, we're in the book of First Samuel, or the book of Samuel, but the first portion of the book of Samuel because it's split in two. There was no devotional video. We're just gonna do the 9 and then go straight through 12 into Psalms, and that should be that. We left off yesterday with Israel demanding a king. Sam gave the people the warning of what a king would mean in your life. But what was sad was that they didn't realize they were asking for something they already had. And I feel like in doing that and asking for something you already had, giving up the King of Kings, right? Giving up the King of Kings because you don't understand the value of what you have. You don't know how to appreciate the value of what you have. So now they're getting like this lesser imitation version that they understand better, And honestly, you can take Egypt out the people. You can take the people out of Egypt. But can you take Egypt out the people? That's the question that we're facing here. It's one of those things where like they're just acting like the Egyptians. They're going about making their own idols. They're going about worshiping their own gods. They're going about disrespecting the name of the Lord. They're going about toting out the Ark of the Covenant. They're going about toting out the Ark of the Covenant without respecting or understanding its true purpose and true cause in amongst them. Instead, they're treating it as this trophy that just guarantees their victory. So, yeah, God's done. He's fed up, and then we enter into Samuel 9. So Saul meets Samuel. There was a wealthy, influential man named Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorath, son of Aphia, of the tribe of Benjamin. His son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. One day Kish's donkey strayed away, and he told Saul, "Take a servant with you." One day Kish's donkey strayed away, and he told Saul, "Take a servant with you and go look for the donkey." So Saul took one of the servants and traveled along the hill country of Ephraim, the land of Shalisha and Shalim area, and the Shalim area, and the entire land of Benjamin, but they couldn't find the donkeys anywhere. Finally, they entered the region of Zupha, and Saul said to his servant, "Let's go home. By now my father will be more worried about us than about the donkeys." But the servant said, "I've just thought of something. There is a man of God who lives here in this town. He is held in high honor by all the people because everything he says comes true. Let's go find him. Perhaps he can tell us where to go." So this man that they're talking about is Samuel. Okay. But we don't have anything to offer him, Saul replied. Even our food is gone, and we don't have a thing to give him. Well, the servant said, I have one small silver piece. We can at least offer it to the man of God and see what happens. In those days, if people wanted a message from God, they would say, let's go and ask the seer, for prophets used to be called seers. All right, Saul agreed. Let's try it. So they started to the town. So they started into the town where the man of God lived. As they were climbing the hill of the town, they met some young women coming out to draw water. So Saul and his servant asked, "Is the seer here today?" "Yes," they replied. Stay right on this road. He is at the town gates. He has just arrived, to take part in a public sacrifice up at the place of worship. Hurry and catch him before he goes up there to eat. The guests won't begin eating until he arrives to bless the food. So they entered the town, and as they passed through the gates, Samuel was coming out toward them to go up to the place of worship. Now the Lord had told Samuel the previous day, about this time tomorrow, About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him to be the leader of my people, Israel. He will rescue them from the Philistines, for I have looked down on my people in mercy and have heard their cry. When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said, That's the man I told you about. He will rule my people. Just then Saul approached Samuel at the gateway and asked, Can you please tell me where the seer's house is? I am the seer, Samuel replied. Go up to the place of worship ahead of me. We will eat there together, and in the morning I will tell you what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, for they have been found. And I am here to tell you that you and your family are the focus of all Israel's hopes. Saul replied, But I'm only from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of that tribe. Why are you talking like this to me? Who else said this? Someone else said this. I'm just this humble. I'm but this person from the smallest tribe of all of this, from the smallest family of those tribes. Someone else said that. I can't pinpoint it, but this has been said before. Okay. So we're at 1 Samuel 9:22. Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and placed them at the head of the table, honoring them about above the 30 special guests. Samuel then instructed the cook to bring Saul the finest cut of meat, the piece that had been set aside for the guests of honor. So the cook brought in the meat and placed it before Saul. Go ahead and eat it, Samuel said. I was saving it for you even before I invited these others. So Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they came down from the place of worship and returned to town, Samuel took Saul up to the roof of the house and prepared a bed for him there. Saul up to the roof? They prepared a bed for him on the roof. At daybreak the next morning, Samuel called up to Saul, Get up, it's time you were on your way. So Saul got ready and he left Samuel. Saul got ready and he and Samuel left the house together. They reached the edge of the town. Samuel told Saul to send his servant on ahead. So many S's. After the servant was gone, Samuel said, "Stay here, for I have received a special message for you from God." 1 Samuel 10. Samuel anoints Saul as king. Then Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it over Saul's head. He kissed Saul and said, "I am doing this because the Lord has appointed you to be the ruler over Israel, his special possession. When you leave me today, you will see two men beside Rachel's tomb at Zelzah on the border of Benjamin." Rachel is... I'm trying to remember these key players. Rachel... in the Bible. Rachel is... yeah. the mother of some of the tribes. Rachel is the favorite wife of Jacob, out of the two, and the mother of Joseph and Benjamin. Yeah, Rachel's father was Laban, and her older sister Leah was Jacob's first wife, even though Jacob wanted to marry Rachel and made that agreement to marry her after 7 years of work. He then gets conned somewhat into marrying Leah, and then he spends another 7 years and gets to marry... well, no, he contracts another 7 years, but like a weekend he gets to marry Rachel. Right. So I'm just gonna write that in here because it's good to remember these things. And Rachel's the wife Jacob worked so hard for. Okay, so they're going to see two men there. They will tell you that the donkeys have been found and that your father has stopped worrying about them and is now worried about you. He is asking, "Have you seen my son?" When you get to the oak of Tabor, you will see 3 men coming toward you who are on their way to worship God at Bethel. One will bring 3 young goats, another will have 3 loaves of bread, and the third will be carrying a wineskin full of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 of the loaves which you are to accept. When you arrive at Gibeah of God, what is that? Yeah, okay. Where the garrison of the Philistines is located, you will meet a band of prophets coming down from the place of worship. They will be playing a harp, a tambourine, a flute, and a lyre, and they will be prophesying. At that time, the Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed into a different person. After these signs take place, do what must be done, for God is with you. Then go down to Gilgal ahead of me. I will join you there to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. You must wait for 7 days until I arrive and give you further instructions. Samuel's signs are fulfilled. As Saul turned and started to leave, God gave him a new heart, and all Samuel's signs were fulfilled that day. When Samuel and his servants arrived at Geba, they saw a group of prophets coming toward them. Then the Spirit of God came powerfully upon Saul, and he too began to prophesy. When those who knew Saul heard about it, they exclaimed, "What? Is even Saul a prophet? How did the son of Kish become a prophet?" And one of those standing there said, "Can anyone become a prophet, no matter who his father is?" Oh, because his father is God, okay? So that is the origin of saying, is even Saul a prophet? When Saul has finished prophesying, he went up to the place of worship. Where have you been? Saul's uncle asked him and his servant. "We were looking for the donkeys," Saul replied, "but we couldn't find them. So we went to Samuel to ask where they were." "Oh, and what did he say?" his uncle asked. "He told us that the donkeys had already been found," Saul replied. But Saul didn't tell his uncle what Samuel said about the kingdom. Saul is acclaimed king. Later, Samuel called all the people of Israel to meet before the Lord at Mizpah, and he said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, has declared. I brought you from Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all the nations that were oppressing you. But though I have rescued you from your misery and distress, you have rejected your God today and have said, 'No, we want a king instead.' Now, therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by tribes and clans." So Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and the tribe of Benjamin was chosen by Lot. Then, see, I'm having a hard time here because this tribe of Benjamin, still engaging part, wasn't Benjamin cut off? And this is like the third time they've said it from the tribe of Benjamin. But Benjamin was cut off. Why were they cut off? They were cut off because of the way they behaved. To that Levite who was on the journey to go get his concubine, who went home, and then when he was on his way back, he had left too late, so he had to take a pit stop, and he went to specifically went to a place of Israel, and that was a town where Benjamin resided over that town. Instead of finding safety and shelter, they found threats and the townspeople, or some of the townspeople, gathered together, attacked the house of the place he was staying, and they shouted, "Bring him out, because we want to have sex with him." And instead of that going down, he pushed his concubine out the door, and she was sexually assaulted to death. And then he brought her home, cut her up, mailed her to the tribes, and was like, "This is what went down in Israel. We are grieved." Civil war gets sparked. In winning the battle of the Civil War, the tribe of Benjamin gets cut off. Okay, it's a refresher for me, really. So when the tribe of Benjamin gets cut off, what do they mean here? Like, they get cut off. Tribe of Benjamin. What am I researching? What's ailing me? The tribe of Benjamin is cut off, yet they are participating in this and then actively being sought after. One with the lots, and then Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin, but he becomes the king of Israel. So what does it mean for the tribe of Benjamin? Oh, really? I think that was that. Okay. The son of Benjamin at the end of the battle left Israel mourning over the potential loss of the tribe of Benjamin, which now comprised only of surviving soldiers. Okay. That's why Benjamin is the smallest of the tribes, because they lost so many. But like, who is the tribe of Benjamin today? Do I still have that? 12 tribes. Where are they now? Okay, Benjamin is the West Indian, guys. If we're going according to this, okay, but what does it mean that the tribes of Benjamin are cut off? Why was the tribe of Benjamin nearly exterminated? We know why. What is special about Benjamin? No. Blah blah blah. Who comes from the tribe of Benjamin? Da, 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 da. Oh, that's why we got the juju. Okay, the tribe of Benjamin. Oh my god. I don't have to have all the answers. It's fine. I don't have to have all of the answers right now. It's okay. It's okay. I want the answers, but I don't need them. Okay, I don't have to have them right now. So I'm gonna pick this up. We keep reading. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, so somehow Benjamin is there and chosen by lots. Okay, so then we're at 1 Samuel 10:21. Then he brought each family of the tribe of Benjamin before the Lord, and the family of the Machtorites was chosen. And finally, Saul, son of Kish, was chosen from among them. But when they looked for him, he had disappeared. So they asked the Lord, "Where is he?" And the Lord replied, "He is hiding among the baggage." So they found him and brought him out, and he stood head and shoulders above anyone else. Then Samuel said, is that height? Is that a height reference? Or did he physically stand head and shoulders above anyone else? Then Samuel said, I think it's a height reference. Then Samuel said to all the people, "This is the man the Lord has chosen as your king. No one in all Israel is like him." And all the people shouted, "Long live the king!" Then Samuel told the people what the rights and duties of the king were. He wrote them down on a scroll and placed it before the Lord. Then Samuel sent the people home again. When Saul returned to his home at Geba, a group of men whose hearts God had touched went with him. But there were some scoundrels who complained, "How can this man save us?" And they scorned him and refused to bring him gifts. But Saul ignored them. Nahash, king of the Ammonites, had been grievously oppressing the people of Gad and Reuben who lived east of the Jordan River. He gouged out the right eye of each of the Israelites living there, and he didn't allow anyone to come and rescue them. In fact, of all the Israelites east of the Jordan, there wasn't a single one whose right eye Nahash had not gouged out. But there were 7,000 men who had escaped from the Amorites, and they had settled at Gabesh Gilead. Gabesh Gilead. Saul defeats the Ammonites. About a month later, King Nahash of Ammon led his army against the Israelite town of Gabesh Gilead, but all the citizens of Gabesh asked for peace. Make a treaty with us, and we will be your servants, they pleaded. All right, Nahash said, but only on one condition. I will gouge out the right eye of every one of you as a disgrace to all Israel. Give us 7 days to send messengers throughout Israel, replied the elders of Gabesh. If no one comes to save us, we will agree to your terms. When the messengers came to Gebed of Saul and told the people about their plight, everyone broke into tears. Saul had been plowing a field with his oxen, and when he returned to town, he asked, "What's the matter? Why is everyone crying?" So they told him about the message from Gabesh. Okay? So again, Saul is working. He's plowing the fields. It's just the thing, they are working, Okay. So then he gets this message and he finds out what's going on. Then the Spirit of God came upon him powerfully, and he became very angry. He took 2 oxen and cut them into pieces and sent the messengers to carry them throughout Israel with his message. This is what will happen to the oxen of anyone who refuses to follow Saul and Samuel into battle. When did Samuel get into this? Well, I mean, it's okay because the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and that's what was said. Okay, so, this is what will happen to the oxen of anyone who refuses to follow Saul and Samuel into battle. And the Lord made the people afraid of Saul's anger, and all of them came out together as one. When Saul mobilized them at Bezek, he found that there was 300,000 men from Israel and 30,000 men from Judah. First of all, the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Greek version read 70,000 men from Judah, but isn't Judah a tribe of Israel, so why is it separated? I feel like I'm getting caught up on... I feel like that's a... Why is it separated, question mark? I'll make this one quick. Judah is Jacob's son. Okay. First take place in let's see if it actually makes sense later. I'm just gonna note it real quick to see why is this stated. Okay. So Saul sent the messengers back to Jabesh Gilead to say, "We will rescue you by noontime tomorrow." There was a great joy throughout the town when the message arrived. The men of Jabesh then told their enemies, "Tomorrow we will come out to you, and you can do whatever you wish." But before dawn the next morning, Saul arrived, having divided his army into 3 detachments. He launched a surprise attack against the Ammonites and slaughtered them the whole morning. The remnants of their armies were so badly scattered that no 2 of them were left together. Then the people exclaimed to Samuel, "Now where are those men who said, 'Why should Saul rule over us?' Bring them here and we will kill them." But Saul replied, "No one will be executed today, for today the Lord has rescued Israel." But Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal to renew the kingdom." So they all went to Gilgal, and in a solemn ceremony before the Lord, they made Saul king. Then they offered peace offerings to the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites were filled with joy. Yay. Right. He does do the right thing there, and he gives God glory for that victory in battle. Samuel's farewell address. Then Samuel addressed all of Israel. "I have done as you asked and given you a king. Your king is now your leader. I stand here before you, an old, gray-haired man. My sons serve you." Gray-haired man and my sons serve you, but we know that they're not up to par. "I have served as your leader from the time I was a boy to this very day. Now testify against me in the presence of the Lord and before his anointed one. Whose ox or donkey have I stolen? Have I ever cheated any of you? Have I ever oppressed you? Have I ever taken a bribe and perverted justice? Tell me, and I will make right whatever I have done wrong." "No," they replied. "You have never cheated or oppressed us, and you have never taken even a single bribe." "The Lord and his anointed one are my witness today," Samuel declared, "that my hands are clean." "Yes, he is a witness," they replied. "It was the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron," Samuel continued. "He brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt. Now stand here quietly before the Lord as I remind you of all the great things the Lord has done for you and your ancestors. When the Israelites were in Egypt and cried out to the Lord, he sent Moses and Aaron to rescue them from Egypt and to bring them into the land. But the people soon forgot about the Lord their God, so he handed them over to Sisera, the commander of Hazor's army, and also to the Philistines and to the king of Moab, who fought against them. Then they cried to the Lord again and confessed, 'We have sinned by turning away from the Lord and worshiping the images of Baal and Ashtoreth. But we will worship you and you alone if you rescue us from our enemies.'" You know what? I said it earlier that Israel was giving Egypt, but you remember when Egypt was like, when Moses was like, "Let my people go," and Pharaoh's heart kept getting hard, and like, he never let the people go until like a new plague would come, and then he'd be like, "All right, Moses, blah blah blah, just get the Lord to stop and I'll let your people go." And then we went through the cycle of him saying this but then turning his back and not actually changing his mind and not actually committing to letting his people go, and it was just a cycle of like, yeah, I'll let the people go. Just tell the Lord to stop punishing me. And then the punishment will stop, and then they go back to their old ways. That's what Israel's giving. You know? They're like, yes, we turned and we worshipped other lords and we forgot you. I'm sorry, Lord. Just rescue us and we will worship you forever. And then they're rescued and they forget their pain and they go back to worshiping these strange gods, and then they're oppressed again. And then they're like, no, but God, we mean it this time. We will worship you and only you. And you know. So that's just this. It's giving me cycle. This same. It's giving me the same cycle. Okay. So we're at Samuel 12:11. Then the Lord sent Gideon, Bedad, Bedan, Jephthah, Jephthah, and Samuel to save you, and you lived in safety. But when you were afraid of Nahash, the king of Ammon, you came to me and said that you wanted a king to reign over you, even though the Lord your God was already your king. All right, here is the king you have chosen. You asked for him, and the Lord has granted your request. Now, if you fear and worship the Lord and listen to his voice, and if you do not rebel against the Lord's commands, then both you and your king will show that you recognize the Lord as your God. But if you rebel against the Lord's commands and refuse to listen to him, then his hand will be heavy upon you as it was upon your ancestors. Now stand here and see the great thing the Lord is about to do. You know it does not rain at this time of year during the wheat harvest. I will ask the Lord to send thunder and rain today. Then you will realize how wicked you have been in asking the Lord for a king. Yeah, because they still don't realize what they did with this request. They just wanted to be like the other nations. They didn't realize what they were giving up. Really, they didn't take to heart what they were giving up in trying to mimic someone else's methods for success. And now he's like, you're going to realize it. Okay. So Samuel called to the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people were terrified of the Lord and of Samuel. Pray to the Lord your God for us, or we will die, they all said. Listen to this disconnect of language, right? I'm going to go back one verse, but just listen to this. So Samuel called to the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people were terrified of the Lord and of Samuel. Pray to the Lord your God for us, or we will die. They all said to Samuel, pray to the Lord your God for us, or we will die. They all said to Samuel, for now we have added to our sins by asking for a king. Don't be afraid, Samuel reassured them. You have certainly done wrong, but make sure now that you worship the Lord with all your heart and don't turn your back on him. Don't go back to worshiping worthless idols that cannot help or rescue you. They are totally useless. The Lord will not abandon his people because that would dishonor his great name, for it has pleased the Lord to make you his very own people. As for him, I will certainly not sin. As for me, I will certainly not sin against the Lord by ending my prayers for you, and I will continue to teach you what is good and right. But be sure to fear the Lord and faithfully serve him. Think of all the wonderful things he has done for you. But if you continue to sin, you and your king will be swept away. Psalms 90. For the choir director, a psalm of Asaph. 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 A psalm of Asaph to be sung to the tune of Lilies of the Covenant. Please listen, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph's descendants like a flock. O God, this is one spot in my throat. Whenever I breathe weird, or just breathe. It's like so dry, and then it makes me cough. Anyway. Start from the beginning. Please listen, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph's descendants like a flock. O God, enthroned above all the cherubim, display your radiant glory to Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Show us your mighty power. Come to rescue us. Turn us again to yourself, O God. Make your face shine down upon us. That only then will we be saved. O Lord God of heaven's armies, how long will you be angry with our prayers? You have fed us with sorrow and made us drink tears by the bucketful. You have made us scorn of neighboring nations. Our enemies treat us as a joke. Turn us again to yourself, O God of heaven armies. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. You brought us from Egypt like a grapevine and drove away the pagan nations and transplanted us into your land. You cleared the ground for us and we took root and filled the land. Our shade covered the mountains. Our branches covered the mighty cedars. We spread our branches west to the Mediterranean Sea. Our shoots spread east of the Euphrates River. But now, why have you broken down our walls so that all who pass may steal our fruit? The wild boar from the forest devours it, and the wild animals feed on it. Come back, we beg you, O God of heaven's armies. Look down from heaven and see our plight. Take care of this grapevine that you yourself have planted, this son you have raised for yourself. For we are chopped up and burned by our enemies. May they perish at the sight of your frown. Strengthen the man you love, the son of your choice, and then we will never abandon you again. Revive us so we can call on your name once more. Turn us again to yourself, O Lord, God of heaven's armies. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. It's given empty promises. It's just and he knows. He knows. He knows. It's given empty promises and he knows. And he still shows up. He's so good. But why though? Oh man, you can't tell me nothing. He knew it was giving empty promises. He knew these people were gonna be disrespectful, disobedient dumbasses, and he still showed up. Every time he showed up every time. They cried out to him, "We are sorry." They repented, and honestly, I can go in. I'm sure in those moments they felt it. It was in their heart. It was in their soul. They were like, "Yo, we gotta follow God. We gotta listen to God." They were there for it in those moments. But it's the fact that they missed the mark on how to keep their faith powered through the generations. No matter what. It was such a wobbly faith Israel had. But he still showed up. And it was prophesied that these people were going to be stubborn. and disrespectful and worship other gods. It was said. So he showed up every time knowing this was going to be bad. I feel like God's right now in the definition of in too deep. Like he's just in and he's not backing away from us. He's showing up. He's showing up in our outcry. He's showing up in our desires for him. He's showing up before we show up. You ever have that one person just waiting for you to show up? That's him. God. Oh, man. Bruh. Why that just hit me so hard? That he knew how deep they were going to fail this mission. To worship him and only him. And still showed up to rescue them when they cried out to him for this. So then on the personal note, what can you do? That you think God will turn away from you? Like he's already come this far with you. Like you're still here. He's already committed this much with you. And he's accepting of true repentance. He's accepting of it. Oh, you repented? Make the promise of you're my God. And he gives you mercy and grace. So what can we do? Like, my mind's blown. Like, okay, so it's prophesized, and he knows that this is just gonna keep happening, right? And he knows he already told them like what the rules are if they're disobedient, and how many times they're allowed to go through this rebellion of this rebellion cycle of theirs. And all the wars in this area throughout history are kind of like documented, and you know, there's a historic period of this is before Christ. There was a lot of battles in this area. So there's the secular description of the turmoil in this area, and then there's the biblical description of the turmoil in this area. And we start to learn that like a lot of these wars, a lot of these losses that Israel suffered was because of their disobedience, and not always. It wasn't always. I guess it could always be considered disobedience. Was because they kind of tried to take powers into their own hands. They were doing whatever was right by their own eyes, and they were doing all that. So all of their decisions unfold, and be it through the oppression or the getting your right eye gouged out and whatever, all of those moments that God still intercedes and rescues them. He still does this. Like, he's being cheated on constantly with other gods, with Israel's own definition of what is right and wrong. He's constantly he knows that mankind has this skew towards evil, or the choosing evil actions. Good or evil, but like he knows that they have more of an inclination to do wrong. But still, like, doing wrong thinking is right because it's only right from your perspective. Like, our perspective is so limited. But we're so headstrong about it, which is weird. And in all of that, he's like, yeah, y'all gonna have to go through some tough lessons here. I feel like that's what the oppression is. Like, That's your grounding. That's your punishment. That's your grounding, you know? And then Israel's like, okay, we'll follow only you. And he's like, all right, cool. And he rescues them, and there's this rejoicing, and then there's a period of peace. I just want to know why we're so bad at passing on the baton from one generation to the next. Like, that baton of faithfulness from one generation to the next. Like, what makes you... Do you have maybe a thought on what would make... I guess, what would make the generations so... What would make it so hard for the generations to maintain that same strong faithfulness of this is our God, and stay worshiping God and only God? Why do you think that baton was so hard to pass on to the next generation? Because they've heard the stories. There are points where, you know, it said like, you know, what about the God from the stories that we heard about? Where are you at now? Like, they've said that, so they've heard the stories, they've seen the signs, they've heard about all the signs and wonders. There's still monuments up. There were still people actively participating in God's plans, and, like, you know, the Levites, all of that, and the priests who were shirking God's responsibilities, or their responsibilities to God, to carry out the offerings correctly and all of that. So there are people who are actively participating but still shirking their responsibilities. What do you think is missing? Or was missing? Is missing? No, I can only think of one thing, and even that kind of falls short on something else is in the sauce messing it up. Something else is in the sauce messing it up. There's a force actively in the sauce messing it up. Oh my gosh. So I was like, okay, alright, so there's this, so we got God in one corner and the devil in the other, right? We got God in one corner and the devil in the other corner, and they're on opposing views, and the devil wants what God has, and God's gonna keep what he has because he don't want to give it up. And they're at ends, and they're fighting, right? But the thing that they're fighting over isn't like as superficial as I think. They're fighting over us, really, at this point. They're fighting over. So God's watching out for us, and this guy's out here, and he's like, nah, I'm gonna shake it up. Like, it can't, if they're on opposite sides and they're warring with each other, it's not really a battle unless they're fighting over the same thing. And God is fighting for us, so clearly he's fighting against us. And if he's fighting against us, then he's in the sauce, making his own plan of attacks, getting people to fall for false idols, or getting people to turn their back on whatever, with lies, and not necessarily lies, but deceptions that he's whispering to the people. Actively in the sauce, messing it up. He's actively in the sauce, messing it up, and like, we can see it from our point of view, as like, I can get it from the empathy. You can get it from the empathy of like human nature, and then like you see it biblically, so you're kind of seeing it from God's point of view. because he ordained to have it done. So like, I feel like he's, you kind of get it from his like, hey, this is my overall perspective of this story. But there's no way of like really getting it all from Satan's point of view. But he's in the story. Like there's another person in the story, or there's another force in the story. Yeah. But then God also likes to test his people. And that's the only reason why this other force can really like interfere. Because God allows it. Right? I think it's time for bed. I gotta go. Bye.